We'll call the Planning Commission to order. If you join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, please. Ready to begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Sean, are there any changes to the agenda?
No changes, Chairman.
Okay. Roll call, please.
Chairman Stoppenbrink,
Here.
Vice Chairman Hill,
Here.
Commissioner Helmar,
Here.
Commissioner Papietro,
Here?
Commissioner Yaden.
He has an excused absence for,
Yeah, he advised us he was not going to be available for the meeting.
okay. And we have Shannon and Sean here. Public comments under Government Code Section 549, 54.2, the members of the audience may address the commission on any items of interest to the public or on any agenda item before or during the commission's consideration of the item. State law prohibits the planning commission from acting on non-agenda items. Are there any public comments at this time? Okay, we'll move on into the consent calendar. We have I need a motion to approve the minutes from our November 12th, 2024 meeting, please.
Make a motion to accept.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I wasn't here, so I don't.
Either was I.
I'll second the minutes. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Chair votes aye. We have 2 abstentions.
Correct.
Okay. Does that,
I think you guys don't have to abstain.
We
just
don't
'cause
have
I
to?
don't think so. No,
Oh.
in order to make sure we get it
They
approved.
read the minutes, didn't
Yeah.
Yeah, I did,
Yeah.
but I didn't, I couldn't verify that that's what actually happened. since- Okay, oh, if I can
Yeah.
vote, then I vote aye.
All vote aye.
all right, it's unanimous. The minutes are approved. Thank you. Public hearing, we have a consideration for a conditional use permit 2401 to construct a new commercial service station, Sinclair, ancillary car washing facility, and associated convenience store located at the south corner of North Fifth Street and Elm Avenue, State Route 33 and State Route 198. APN number 072-127-22. Sean?
All right, thank you. Commissioners, tonight staff's recommending the Planning Commission adopt Resolution 025P-001, approving, subject to conditions of approval, a site plan review, conditional use permit, and environmental review for the construction of a new commercial service station with 3 gas pumps, 6 fueling stations, a new 1,519 square foot convenience store, and a new 1,120 square foot car wash and associated on and off improvements located at the south corner of North Fifth Street and Elm Avenue, which is State Route 33, 198. So on September 19th of 2024, the City of Coalinga received an application for conditional use permit, site plan review, and environmental review submitted by the applicant, BGV International, to construct a new commercial service station, which is a Sinclair service station, with the washing facility and associated convenience store. In accordance with the Coalinga Municipal Code, a site plan review is required for all new commercial primary buildings. In addition to this, the conditional use permit is required when a service station is proposed. Once the applications were deemed complete, staff requested comments from the necessary city departments in addition to Caltrans, and this report incorporates feedback from all the city departments and Caltrans. So just to kind of go through mention the square footage of the car washing facility, the gas station, and the convenience store. In terms of general plan consistency, the general plan land use designation for the parcel is commercial general, with a zoning designation of general commercial. The CG general commercial land use designation is designed to encourage areas of concentrated retail, generally located adjacent to major streets. The CG zoning designation permits food, drug, clothing, and other retail uses, and services including small restaurants, laundry outlets, among other services. The proposed auto service station is a conditionally permitted use in the CG zone district. This proposed project is consistent with the general plan goals and policies to expand opportunities for the community. The relevant general plan policies are detailed. So we kind of identified some of the corresponding land use goals and policies that are consistent with this proposed development. The proposed project is in compliance with these policies because it complies with the downtown design guidelines as described in more detail in the report that establish the design criteria for the city's small town character, and the project adds to the community neighborhood quality by developing the site in compliance with the adopted design guidelines. The proposed project also improves the balance among the commercial businesses, especially along State Route 33. So in terms of surrounding land uses, to the south, there's service commercial, which is separated by an alley. To the west, east, and north are all general commercial parcels. In the report, I kind of identify the requirements for the site plan review and what's basically included in that, and then also the findings of approval when looking at a site plan review for this type of development. I know the commission's familiar with that, and in the report, it kind of explains the 4 findings for the site plan review. So in terms of some of the analysis related to the project, we look at Article 3 in the zoning regulations regarding commercial and mixed-use districts, which is Section 9-2203, and we look at the development regulations. So in terms of, we look at the structure, we look at height, we look at access to the parcel, utilities, we also look at parking, and so we've identified the parking. This project's requires 10 parking spaces as further outlined in the table. You have parking related to the service station, and you also have parking related to the automobile vehicle washing. The project parking was analyzed as one project since the development shares access and parking areas. And based on the analysis of the project scope, 10 parking spaces would be the maximum needed for this site. Thus, the 13 parking spaces provided for the project would actually exceed that requirement. In terms of refuse containers, solid waste and recycling containers enclosures are required for all new commercial developments, and all these enclosures shall comply with the California Fire Code and shall meet the minimum requirements outlined in the section unless it's demonstrated that it's infeasible, determined by the Community Development Director. The project does propose 1 refuge container enclosure for the entire site, which will support the entire site. We also look at landscaping and the requirements of a minimum 10% of the parking lot shall be landscaped. The site is 30,000 square feet roughly, and the proposed development provides approximately 3,900. The site plan exceeds that landscape requirement of 10%, providing landscaping the parking areas and adjacent to the exterior of the building. In terms of lighting and illumination, exterior lighting shall be provided for the secure nighttime pedestrian environment by reinforcing entrances, public sidewalks, and open areas with a safe level of illumination. A lighting plan will be provided as part of the final construction drawings and has been incorporated as a condition of approval, so those will be provided on the final site plan. The project applicant will be required to provide adequate lighting and illumination on site and avoid spillover, which we would call nuisance lighting of adjacent properties. In terms of signage was not approved as part of the application, and they'll basically need to submit a typical sign permit application, which will be reviewed and approved at an administrative level once the application is complete. So that's kind of in line with the service station, and then we also look at the conditional use permit for the auto service station and car washing. So there are certain criteria that we look at. And the development proposes an automobile service station and ancillary car washing facility. And pursuant to Section 9-2302, automobile service stations and ancillary car washes are permitted with a conditional use permit. A conditional use permit is required for a service station, as mentioned, and the Planning Commission shall only approve the conditional use permit and ancillary service station facilities if it makes the required findings for a conditional use permit, which are identified in here. So in terms of landscaping, some of this information is a little bit repeated, but at least 10% of the site shall be landscaped. And so we've kind of identified the landscaped areas. The project proposes approximately 3,900 square feet of landscaping, so it does meet that criteria. There are some other criteria and other specifics regarding planters provided along the total front of the street property, excepting portions of that are used for vehicular and pedestrian openings. Additionally, the proposed convenience store is located at the corner of the site, closest to the intersection and North Fifth Street. Therefore, the required 600-foot planter is not applicable. And that's more consistent with the downtown design guidelines and some of the downtown overlay that really try to push buildings to the front, similar to what we did with the office, actually, that's right across the street. It also looks at the bay doors and, basically any kind of bay doors, if there's any additional service for the service station or if there's auto repair that's tied to it, the location of those bay doors, the pump islands, and kind of certain distances and setbacks for pump islands, canopies and roof structures. We look at those and we analyze the location of those, the washing facilities, and basically, their setback from public right-of-way and any kind of residential districts. It looks at that. And then also hours of operation. So the automotive, the vehicle washing facilities are limited from 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. 7 days a week. Hold on. Sorry. My computer's acting weird. Please don't restart on me. Okay. Hours of operation. So when adjacent to residential, then typically the hours of operation are reduced. The applicant's operational statement identifies the hours from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. However, it's not specified if these are the proposed hours of operation for all uses on the site. Regardless, the project will be conditioned to limit the car wash facilities to 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. Since they're not really adjacent to any residential districts, so they'll be subject to that. And then we also have some criteria regarding the downtown overlay district guidelines. So the development is located within the downtown overlay district, which requires the project to comply with the downtown design guidelines and the municipal code section 9-3103, which are the overlay district regulations. So in terms of the design guidelines, we look at other criteria. So talking about street preservation, we look at parking location, parking lot access, parking lot walkways and curbs, open space for commercial use, pedestrian connections, and then we also look at really the design. It kind of comes down to the design of the building, right? So we look at the building design from ground floor windows to limits on blank walls, wall plane articulation, building entrances, mechanical equipment, and making sure you kind of preserve and hide that mechanical equipment, screening utilities, as well as building security. And so all of that kind of ties into the overlay. So in the report, it kind of explains all of those items and how all that criteria has been met in that design. I know that I mentioned in the beginning of the report that we received this application on September 24th, although that was when the application was kind of deemed fully complete for us to begin our review. This project actually has been in the works for well over 2 years. There's been a lot of back and forth with Caltrans in terms of access and the criteria and the requirements that Caltrans has on properties, as we've experienced in the past, on the state highway. Now, as we know, this is on 2 state highways, 198 and 33. So there's been a lot of back and forth with Caltrans, with the developer, as well as with staff, meeting the criteria, meeting the requirements for turning radiuses of trucks, make sure that the fueling trucks can access adequately, avoid queuing in the car wash to make sure that vehicles aren't backing out into the right of way. So make sure you have adequate circulation on site and access to this particular site. With some additional information, we also look at the environmental consideration, and this project has been reviewed in compliance with CEQA, which is the California Environmental Quality Act, and has been deemed categorically exempt under the Class 32 exemption related to infill development. And there's 5 pieces of criteria when analyzing it for infill development, which is 1, the project is consistent with all the applicable general plan designations and all applicable general plan policies, as well as applicable zoning designations and regulations. That the proposed development occurs within the city limits on a project no more than 5 acres, surrounded by urban uses. The project site has no value as for habitat, endangered, rare, threatened species. We don't typically see that in the urban core of the city. Approval of the project would not result in any significant effects relating to traffic, noise, air quality, or water quality. And the site is adequately served by all required utilities and public services. With that, we if this project's approved, then we would file that notice of exemption. On January 30th, public hearing notices were posted and mailed in accordance with state and local regulations. And as of the writing of this report, we've received no written or verbal communication related to the project. And so then we also look at the reasons for recommendations. So when we look at the site plan review findings, there's 8 listed here with some subsets of what some of the required findings when looking at a site plan review. A lot of this is all design oriented. It's based on what's being proposed, is it permitted, and does it meet all the design criteria? And this site and this development does meet all that design criteria. And then you have the conditional use permit findings when it comes to general plan consistency, neighborhood compatibility, and then asset for the neighborhood. And so in conclusion, the appropriateness of the project has been examined with respect to its consistency with the goals and policies of the general plan, the downtown design guidelines, and the Coalinga Municipal Code, its compatibility with surrounding existing uses, and its avoidance or mitigation of potential significant adverse environmental impacts. So these factors have been evaluated as described above. So upon consideration and evaluation, it can be concluded that the conditional use permit application is appropriate for the subject property. So with that, I will be more than happy to answer any questions you may have. The applicant, I think, and their group are in the audience if you have any questions for the applicant. And again, Chairman, this is a public hearing.
Yeah, I think I'd go ahead and open the public hearing first, if the commissioner's okay with that, and then we can ask questions. Robbie,
You're the boss.
okay. Thank you. At this time, I'll open the public hearing for this conditional use permit. Anybody in the audience who'd like to please come forward and state your name for the record and speak in favor or against, please do so at this time. It's open. Gerard. Oh, where do you want them?
The mic should be hot right there, right there.
I'm not very good at speaking publicly, so forgive me.
It's all right.
I have a question. Obviously, I would be opposed to it for obvious reasons. And the reason I'm concerned is there's 2 closed gas stations in this town existing right now, possibly a third one sometime. Has anybody done any research on what the potential for volume and gallons and car washes in this town? Has anybody done any research on that, including them? I'm curious.
Are you talking about the water usage?
No, gallons of
Or
gas.
gallon of gas?
You have less and less cars. I've been doing this for quite a while, 30 years in the gas business, 53 years in the convenience store business. You either have to have volume or margin. And in this town, you can only have one. If you're Costco or Walmart, you're going to get the volume because they're selling gas cheap. In this town, you better have one or the other, or you're going to have empty buildings again. The cost of keeping a gas station compliant is extreme, especially in this county and in this state. And I do believe they mandated electric cars in this state by, was it 2030?
2030.
So gallons are consistently going down. And that's including some of the other stations in town, obviously. I just kind of don't understand of all the things that we need in this town. I think we're being served, I would like to believe that we're being served adequately in this town by the stations that we have in this town. But I just want to go on the record, I am opposed to it for obvious reasons, but legitimate reasons too. I've noticed a lot of people coming into my station and measuring my car wash and going into my car wash, and I'm sure I don't really appreciate that. If they want to come talk to me, they could have came and talked to me. If they want to buy the place, they come buy it. But anyway, I just had to say what I had to say.
Thank you, Gerard.
Thank you.
Any other comments from the audience for the public hearing? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. Commissioners, questions?
Yeah, I had a few for Sean, and yeah, I did notice that, Sean, the Caltrans report initiated was in 22. There were several things on the 22, and by the time I got to this final letter in 24, it seemed to get pared down and things had mostly been resolved. There were still a few things with access and some stuff. But I take it that letter from Caltrans in 24 does reflect their current state, and it meets with both the design guidelines and the applicant.
That was one of the biggest issues, is that when the changes were made, and Caltrans was like, okay, that works, it didn't work with us. A lot of it was site distance because we require the buildings to be up closer to the corner. Well, we've had to have a lot of back and forth with Caltrans to make sure, hey, that's what our plan is for a lot of development, or if we do have buildings in these areas, to bring them up. Well, this one happens to be on the corner, so they had to, but the site distance they were able to resolve with some of the setback issues. Some of the other issues were access. They wanted truck turning templates and provide those studies, and so those were things that took delays. But yes, there was a lot of back and forth to ensure that it met our design guidelines. So sometimes changes would be contrary to what we had to. So there was some pushback. We had to talk with Caltrans and then also with the applicant, based on the changes. So there was basically between the three that had to meet the criteria of all.
Okay. And the other one that I noticed on the plans, and I just can't find it on the plans, is where the parking lot design is. I can't find what we would call a drying center or vacuum center, or how that's mixed in.
I think based on our restrictions regarding the number of parking spaces required, and even the convenience store was a lot larger before, but since the convenience store square footage dictates the parking requirement, I think some of that was removed because of that criteria.
Because I guess that was a concern. If you added in vacuums and things like that, all of a sudden, boy, you're out of parking quickly.
Yes.
So you're saying that at this point, there is no
Yeah,
vacuums?
I think based on the original, I think there was some vacuums, but I think they removed them due to the parking requirements, so they had to provide the parking.
Okay. And then I guess my last one is just that I understand where Gerard's coming from, and when I look at Elm, and I look from one end to the other, and I see three of our best, or two of our best mini markets or, gas stations are there. As longtime Kalingans, we always wanted one out by the motel on Jane Avenue. But I mean, I understand that we may not be able to dictate where that goes. And then I guess the other one is that knowing that this study probably started back in 2021, 22, I'm wondering how current the market research is for the applicant, that they still feel strongly about pursuing this
Yeah,
project.
as you guys know, applications are applicant-driven. We don't
Yep.
dictate what comes in, what comes out. So if we receive an application and someone's interested in buying property and developing in town, we look at it based on policies and implementations and general plans and everything that's in place. So we analyze it from a perspective of design and whether or not it's a permitted type use. And so when we look at these types of projects, it comes from that kind of perspective. So my understanding is that the fact that the applicant has stuck around this long, I would imagine it still makes sense for them.
Yeah, and I understand, and we've been as a commission, we've been in this position before to know that. You're right. What our job is to do is to digest the information that you've presented us, and then it can get passed on somewhere else if someone doesn't agree with the decisions that we make. So that's all I have for now, Chairman.
Thank you. Commissioner Helmer?
I have some questions about the water usage. What kind of water efficiency or water recycling will be used in this project? And what's the estimated usage?
I don't know if we have that information. The applicant is here, he might have that information. Do you guys have that information on the car wash?
The equipment that we are using now is high.
If you don't mind.
I'm sorry, I'm hard of hearing and talking too loud. The technology that we're using is a really highly efficient, latest technology, so the water consumption is minimized. Plus, we have a circulation, so a lot of the water will be reused a few times before it's discarded.
Is there any way that you could quantify that?
Yes, we could, and I could get that information to you.
Okay,
It'll be just an estimation because we're not sure exactly how many.
okay, I appreciate that. My other question is, will there be a dinosaur?
I haven't decided on that. That's up to the city if they.
Okay,
That'll be the sign.
Yeah, it'll be up to the sign application.
Okay.
Because I think it's technically, it would be technically a sign, I think.
Okay,
Anything?
that's it?
Commissioner Hill?
Okay, my understanding is that, they're only going to go on the get on the property from Elm, right?
There's access off of Elm
Or the alley.
or the alley off of Fifth, yes.
Is that alley gonna be redone? Because if that amount of traffic going through that alley, the alley's not in that great a shape.
There are some improvements that will need to be done, but within the project site, but access, we don't have anything, I don't think we have conditions.
It does say in the conditions that the alley will be paved from the property lines.
For the property lines, yeah, so basically halfway essentially.
Okay, now what about when there's not gonna be no stop sign? 'Cause to me, it seems like that's gonna, I know it said it's not impacting on traffic or accidents or whatever, but if you got a lot of traffic coming out of that alley, I mean, it could be a lot of traffic maybe coming out of that alley. If you have a convenience store, the gas station, the car wash, people trying to get out of that alley, because they're not gonna be able to go out the other way, off of Elm more than likely, right?
Yeah, they can get off
Well,
on
I mean,
Elm
if-
too.
if
It's a
that's-
two-way access off onto Elm, and then there's the access off the alley. And it's a designated drive, kind of a driveway out of the development, where I know we have other areas, I think we even have service stations and other types of development that open right out into the alley, completely open to the alley.
And we went with Caltrans over this for 6, 7 months, doing a queuing analysis and a traffic study based on that. I mean, I had a hard time getting Caltrans to approve so we worked together with them, and as Sean had mentioned, the line of sight, and so all those criteria have been met on this. So we don't expect major traffic on the alley because we've got enough space for them to use the one on Elm.
Well, I think you're kind of wrong there, because I've seen traffic at our different stations that we have, and you get a busy Friday or a busy Saturday, and you got a lot of traffic at these convenience stores and gas stations coming and going. And you can have an analysis by Caltrans, but they're not there when we have a busy, if it's a football game or a basketball game or whatever, something going on. There's a ton of traffic that will come out of that alley and on the Elm, and that's a stop sign there on Fifth. I can see congestion right there. I don't know about Caltrans' feelings, but in California, I mean, in Kalinga, I've seen that.
Sean, did Caltrans put those stripes down to do a car count for this project?
No, when they look at traffic analysis, they'll look at the type of use. So so if it's a service station, they have certain criteria. They're able to see what the traffic counts potentially would be based on the type of use.
So they didn't put the actual strips down to do the count?
No, there was no traffic study done.
Okay.
Because in a lot of times when we look at land uses that are either permitted by right or conditionally permitted, typically they're consistent, those types of uses are consistent with the locations that have been identified, like in the general plan. So unless, it's a new development area, or if you have a mixture of uses, sometimes it'll trigger some traffic studies. But something like on an infill type project where it's a smaller lot, typically any type of use that's typically within approved by right or by condition, like a conditional use, typically won't have those. You don't assume they're gonna have those impacts.
On your convenience store, are you gonna be selling hard liquor in there as well?
We don't have the permits for hard liquor as yet, so that's something we haven't really gotten to.
Okay, because we have a few liquor stores in town. I'm just wondering if are you gonna be trying to get a liquor license?
Not in the works as yet. Wasn't even discussed at this point. Because initially the store was a little bigger. Now we had to meet the parking and the circulation, we had to shrink that store down. So I don't think it's not gonna be a liquor store.
Okay.
But will you be selling beer and wine?
Beer and wine, yes.
Are you gonna have a beer cave?
We're still in the design phase. I'd like to get a beer cave in there, but I don't know whether I have enough room for that.
Okay.
Any other questions? So I have a question. So there is already a vacant gas station right there across from me and Ed's. Any particular reason why you wouldn't have looked at that particular property and considered purchasing that and refurbishing it to what, an existing gas station?
We wanted to do new construction, so we have control of everything, because a lot of these old equipments are beginning to fail. And I've been through that. We've been doing this for 30 years, so we're using the latest technology, efficiency. That's where we save on our overhead costs by having highly efficient buildings, lights, and have some solar panels on the roof, and curb our regular expenses that way by, again, like you mentioned, the car wash, the equipments that we're using are the latest technology, which is low power consumption, less water. So that's where we make. If I put a regular car wash, a 100-foot tunnel, that's going to give me a $20,000 a month PG&E bill. So that's not, we won't be able to survive with that. So, and again, like Sean had mentioned, we shrinked the building, the C-store, down to about 1,600 square feet to meet the other requirements. So it's kind of a little, we're taking a risk, but
So, what's your forecast for construction time and operation?
once permits issued, again, all depends on PG&E, whether, how long they're gonna take, but the actual construction, I think 8 months should be
8
ample
months?
time for us.
And how many people are you gonna employ?
I'd say we'd start with about 5 at least and see how it goes, couple in a car wash and few in the C-store. So I don't want to say I'm gonna bring 10 on board at this point. If it picks up and does good, then definitely yes, but I'll say at least we have intention to have 5 people at least, full-time.
Thank you. And Sean, you found no reason based on our current codes to disapprove this project, is that correct, my understanding?
No, yeah, based on the review, it meets all the criteria of the code.
Okay. Well, Commissioners, we have before us, go ahead.
Yeah,
Rocco.
just one way as I look at the site plan, and I thought of Richard's comment. So it actually dumps more further back from Fifth than I thought onto the alley. And one of my concerns would be is the way that comes out, and if we visualize Fast Trip coming out of Fast Trip, you can access that alley to come all the way this way, right? Can we, and I'm thinking the thrift stores right there on that corner where people are gonna now be accessing that alley to go to and from that store, because it's gonna be an easy way to get out. And something that I'm just curious of in the future, could we one-way that alley? Do we have the right to do that down the road, or, because I guess my concern is we've all been behind that thrift store unloading and loading and things like that. Now, all of a sudden, we've got an abundance of two-way traffic going down that alley, because to Richard's point, it's gonna be easier sometimes to come out that alley and go down to, whatever that would be,
Oh, Sixth?
Sixth.
I mean, that would probably have to be a policy decision by the council.
Yeah, so just,
If they wanted to look at that, but I
Just-
can at least take note of it.
yeah, just food for thought, because I can see that gonna be, just like I see it down there, it's gonna become a way to get out of there without having to fight between the four-way stop and the truck route stop signs.
Well, that's my concern about the alley. If the whole alley's not is repaired, then it's gonna get 5 times the use it gets now. I don't know what this thing, are we supposed to be on? Yeah. If this thing, alley gets used as much as it looks like it's going to be used, and it's not repaired, like you say, down by the thrift store side, it's gonna really get tore up. And then, his side will be done, but 3/4 of it's not gonna be done at that point. And that alley, is one of the alleys that should be repaired. I think it's something the city council or somebody needs to look into.
Yeah, just food for thought.
But it's not a Caltrans thing, that's a city thing, and I don't know about if it's wide
And
enough for.
the development will pay impact fees, so there are street-related impact fees that could be, potentially applied to that. So that would be something we could look at based on what's being built. There would be street impact fees. This is a conditional use permit, so based on whatever, the conditions that are placed on it. So right now, the conditions state that it's half of the, basically half, or, the project frontage, or the rear of the project, off the alley.
Okay.
But yeah, there will be payment of impact fees as well, which is basically and that's streets and roads. You got other impact fees from different facilities, sewer, water, gas, that kind of stuff.
Well, I think it would be a wise thing to put before the council somehow the paving of the entire alley and the one-way versus two-way. If that's something that you could follow up with council on, I think that would be appreciated.
I think that's a good, oh, I'm sorry, Roger.
Yeah.
Call me. I mean, it's just a concern that, I mean, that I see, because like I say, when you go to Fast Trip, man, that alley's being used, you know, I mean, constantly being used one way or the other, and then, I don't know, just something to think about.
Okay.
Any other questions?
I'm good.
Thank you. All right, Commissioners, you have before you a action item for Resolution 05025P-001 for this environmental site plan review, and the Chair will entertain a motion.
I motion to approve.
We have a motion to approve. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a second. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Commissioner Helmer,
Aye.
Commissioner Papietro,
Aye.
Vice Chairman Hill,
I'm gonna say no.
Chairman Stoppenbrink.
Aye. All right, thank you. Discussion and our potential action items, Sean, we have anything else?
No, no more.
Department reports,
I have none, Chairman.
staff announcements,
None.
commissioner announcements.
None for me.
When's our next meeting, Chairman? I mean,
We should have one the first week of March, or
And
the second week of March, so March 11th, I think, is the next one.
we also have an, will that be our organizational meeting, or is that?
No, I think we're kind of off because we reorganized in August when we brought in, who came on in August? Chuck.
Yeah.
So we reorganized right after that. So I think we're kind of off. So I think I might just wait until
Next year?
next year.
Okay.
Yeah, because we don't have anything, I don't think we have any new commissioners up this year. So we'll just wait till next year and we'll get back on kind of our normal schedule.
Okay.
Okay. Well, with that, we'll adjourn the meeting at 6:36 PM. Thank you all for coming.